Hey everyone, welcome to Bhavika and Lotus CS Chapter. Today we are recording our second episode, and with us we have a special guest today. She's Kristi Faltorusso. Who doesn't know her? Of course, she's the talk of the town on LinkedIn and everywhere else, and of course, my personal favorite. She's working as a VP of Customer Success at Intellishift, which is based in New York, and with her. Here as hosts, we have Lotte. She's working as a customer success manager at Belens, and I'm working as a CSM at Algonomy. Today, we are really happy to welcome you here, Christy, on the show, and we are really delighted to have you here with us. And any thoughts you want to say, anything you want to communicate to the audience, please feel free to.
I'm just thrilled to be here. I am honored to be your second episode. That is really exciting for me. Your first episode was fantastic. So thrilled to be a part of today's conversation. I think it's going to be a good one.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words, and I know this episode will definitely break all records, so I am really excited for the same. Okay, so today with Christy we'll be discussing about a topic which is called handling churn. How should we handle churn? Of course, it is not only a CSM's responsibility to handle churn. It's on the shoulders of the entire organization, and how should we actually handle it in a best possible manner? For that, we have Christy with us today. With this, I'm giving this over to Christy. She would have some time to just share her thoughts with us that how should we best handle churn in our organization. Yeah, over to you, Christy.
Awesome. Thank you. So I think the first thing I always love to talk about is the fact that churn, while might be the accountability falls on customer success, the responsibility of churn falls on everyone, right? So we as customer success managers, if you are an organization where you're managing the renewal cycle, right, you are accountable for making sure that that's well executed, that you're managing it in a timely manner, that you're getting ahead of these issues well in advance to mitigate any risk. But the reality of it is churn, right, is a symptom of a bigger disease. And so it is critical to understand what the impetus of that churn is. So what I've spent a lot of time doing is really not focusing on the churn itself. So when I insert myself into an organization, before I'm trying to fix the problem, right? Like go and let's go save all these accounts. I want to understand the systemic issue. What is causing the churn?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that every organization needs to do is to collect some data. Right. You really need to understand what are those leading indicators? What are the reasons why customers are dissatisfied with a partnership? So earlier this week, I actually put out some content supporting churn in anticipation of today's conversation. But one of the things I highlighted was, my 10 common reasons or buckets or categories of churn. And so I talk about price and product, competition, state of the business, lack of value, access to leadership, experience, need, ownership, and fit. And I really have found that those 10 buckets thematically capture most reasons why customers leave. Now, I've heard people say, well, listen, you could bucket it into two, right? It's state of the business, right? Business goes under, M&A, COVID, right? And then value. But I do think it's important for organizations to go a little bit deeper because you can't just say it's going to be value and that's the only impetus. Because I'll tell you, I've worked as a CSM on accounts where they have been very transparent with me that they get a ton of value. They really appreciated the support and the insight that I brought, right? There was no issues with the partnership. They were thrilled. What happened is their budgets were cut. And due to the business impact, they could no longer afford our software and they had to move to a point solution, right? So that isn't a value issue. That became price and their state of the business. So while I think the notion of having just two simple categorizations is nice, I do think that in order to get ahead of these things and understand the issue, you got to break it down a bit more. So my first recommendation, understand where the churn is coming from, what is causing it, and then try to figure out what are the things that you can actually address. So again, don't try to solve it downstream when a customer has already decided to leave. Guess what? It's too late. Getting somebody to reroute and change their opinion and their sentiment that has been probably developed for a very long time is hard. So instead, you got to focus earlier into the life cycle, get ahead of these issues. So once I've done some analysis to understand the why behind the leading buckets of churn, I go and I fix that, right? So whether that be price, great, I'm going to go work with our marketing team. I'm going to work with our product marketing team. We're going to go figure out what is the go-to-market price, right? What is the real value of our solution as compares to other products in the market, right? If it's competition, how do you get ahead of that? How do you enable the team to anchor on differentiators, use those differentiators in their workflow? So I think that's the way that I think about it. But in addition to the categorization and addressing it earlier, you've got to get everyone in the company on board, right? So the democratization of data is so critical. You've got to make sure that everyone has visibility into the why, that everyone has visibility into the early indicators, that you're having conversations cross-functionally to address these issues, and that everyone understands the impact. Because the business, listen, at the end of the day, your price is going to be what your price is, right? Maybe you don't want to commoditize, you want to adjust because you believe this is what your product is worth, fine. But as a company, you have to make a cognizant decision to say, I'm going to hold firm on my price because this is what I believe it's worth at the risk that some customers can't afford it. So this is where it's important to just make sure you've got everyone in the company rallied around what's happening here, and that as a business, you're making strategic decisions to do one thing or the other.
Right, right. And also, Christy, like you were mentioning, there's some things which you cannot do about. So if there's a pandemic and the business is not able to afford your product, CSM is not at fault. Like he or she cannot do about it. So two major parts like in which we can actually divide churn is, one is avoidable churn and one is unavoidable churn. There are some reasons where you cannot avoid churn and you have to let go of the customer. Of course, there's always a feeling that's attached with the customer you've been working, and I understand. But yes, I saw when I was in my previous company, yes, there were a lot of businesses that would hit, and of course, sadly, this pandemic has affected many lives. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. And also, Christy, one question here: do you have any specific playbook or any such specific template or that you are internally working with your team or maybe some other stakeholders, which is definitely helpful in handling churn?
Absolutely. So I'm going to self-proclaim myself as the playbook queen and tell you that we've got we use Gainsight as our customer success platform. We have 72 playbooks built out in Gainsight. I know, you're all thinking 72, what are you, crazy person? They are not all automatically deployed. Some are manual, some are automatic, but these playbooks give the team very clear instruction on how to navigate some of the issues, right? So for all the churn reasons I've outlined here, there are steps to remedy. Obviously, not every customer is the same. So what we do also encourage the team is to build in what is required to navigate the particular situation with that individual customer. So if it is competition, for example, we do ask that our team, we're in a competitive space. We do ask the team to ask competitive questions early and often in the partnership. And it doesn't have to be, are you evaluating any other solution, right? It could be a simple lean in where it is a bit softer, saying, we know that there is a lot of technology in the market. Is there anything that you're seeing that has caught your interest? Is there anything that you feel our technology doesn't provide for you today that you'd like us to explore with you? It could be a knowledge gap for your customer. It could be a product gap for you. So it's making sure that you're getting ahead of these things. So we've got playbooks for all of them. The minute we understand risk, some of these things can be automated, right? So for example, if a customer is not engaging us, right, that is likely going to lean into the lack of value because they're not getting what they need from the partnership, which can translate into their ability to truly understand how to leverage the solution effectively to get the value to drive the outcomes, right? So we look at certain triggers. Engagement is one of them, right? If our customers are not talking with us, we haven't had what we consider a high valued activity or an HVA, it will fire a playbook on low engagement. And so it will encourage the CSM to take some prescriptive steps to get ahead of that. So I won't bore everybody with every single playbook. I will be pumping some stuff out on LinkedIn, but I think it's important to understand the early indicators and triggers, and then making sure that your team is doing what they can and what you need them to do in order to orchestrate that early enough. Now, I will say one playbook that we do deploy that I think has been extremely helpful is we run actually a survey. It's not necessarily a playbook. It's a survey on retention. So 6 months, so not 120, not 90, 6 months before the renewal date, we send a survey to some of the key stakeholders in the partnership. And it is simply saying, is it your intention to renew your subscription with Intellishift? So it's a yes or no, right? We're just asking them, is it your intention, right? Do you plan on continuing the partnership? So if it's a yes, great. We've got a series of things that we run as a next step where, Mr. Customer, we're so excited. We're going to run like an upsell motion, a growth motion, an advocacy play. If it's no, or if it's a non-response, we handle those similarly. So if they say no, great, we've got now 6 months to triage that and figure out what's gone wrong, so we have enough time to get ahead of it, right? But if you're waiting until 90 days, 3 months, at that point, your customer probably already has an alternative solution selected, planned out, and gonna get it ready to deprecate your product. So we have found that playbook, or that survey rather, has helped us understand risk so much earlier in the cycle. And obviously we've got other surveys that go out to help us capture sentiment, where we definitely close the loop, and we've got playbooks on all those, but that really helps us understand the imminent risk, and then we can go and unpack that with the customer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Just one word.
I find it very interesting that you really go in depth with all your playbooks and with all the buckets, because it is true. Every situation is different. You really need to understand the customer and really know why they churn. And with just, like you said, 2 buckets, even if you can just say it's value, if you don't go into depth, it's also important to go into the deeper story to know why is this customer churning and how can I help this customer. It's very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, we've found that we have gone down a path where we thought the issue was competition. The reality of it is we didn't have access to the right leadership. Their leader came in and had used another solution in the past, and they said, I'm a champion of X product, so we're going to get rid of yours and we're going to replace it with this. Had we had access to that executive stakeholder to build a relationship, we would have been able to navigate that a bit better, right? I do believe that in those instances, sometimes it's a gap of them understanding the solution you provide. Also the cost of change, right? There's a real inherent cost of replacing a technology. So, you know, those are always interesting for us when we think it's one thing and we're navigating it, and then all of a sudden, it's something else. And we would have rerouted the conversation a bit differently. But these are the things, you know, these are our moments to learn as customer success leaders and managers, right? So I think the earlier you can get ahead of these things, the better questions you're asking, the better conversations you're having, and also understanding, like, listen, we have a multifaceted role. We've got to build relationships. We've got to prove value. We've got to help drive adoption. We've got to do all of these things. I think if you're doing all of those things well, great. You're probably reducing risk organically upstream, but that's why you've got to make sure that your team is well orchestrated and understands what they need to do every day.
Right. And with this also, Kristi, one thing I would like to just put forth here is that I read it somewhere just a few days back. Best customer success managers never stop learning. So like you just mentioned, it's very important to learn at every stage. Even from your bad customers, you learn. You get to learn a lot of experiences. You get to know how do you handle tough situations. So I definitely loved every bit of what you said. And I really like the bit that you are actually using so many playbooks. So of course, I am not able to ask you about those playbooks here, but offline, of course, I would be talking to you about them. So with this, we will move on to our second round. That's rapid fire, because it's a customer success chat show and we want to make it very much chirpy and talkative. We have some beautiful rounds and we've got a great response from the audience that they really love such rounds. With this, I'll give over to Rote. She would be asking few questions from Kristi.
Great.
All right. What is a good churn rate?
I'm going to say a good retention rate, positive. So I'm going to say I feel good about, depends on how large your customer base is, right? And then also the demographics. So I do add those disclaimers, but I would say if you've got a 96% retention rate, you're keeping 96% of your logos, and we'll leave it at logo, not revenue retention. I think you're in a good place. And so it's hard to strive for 100. It's hard to strive for 98. And I'm using this in the economic climate in which we're operating today, right? Probably if you would have asked me this question a year or two ago, I'd say strive for 98. That feels realistic. But I would say today, 96, if you're not supporting any of the industries that were directly hit by the pandemic.
Right. Yeah.
All right. What is the best indicator to measure churn or retention, if you want?
There's so many indicators because there's so many churn reasons. I would say, listen, if you, can I break it down into 3 instead of 1?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have healthy relationships built high and wide in the organization?
Okay.
Have you proven value with your customer? So are they seeing the outcomes that they sought to see when they brought you into the partnership? And the third one would be, you know, at the end of the day, are you providing a good experience? So I would say those are 3 benchmarks of measurement that we use to help us indicate real risk later down the line.
All right. Is every churn bad?
No, and you don't have to save every customer. Some customers are meant to be let go. We fight, and sometimes you waste your time and your cycles and your energy and your resources trying to save an unsavable customer. It is very common, especially in early stage companies, that your sales team is going to sell, right? To anyone who'll buy. But this is why I had customer fit on my list of churn reasons. Sometimes the customer doesn't know what they need. They don't know what they don't know. They'll buy a product because they think it's going to solve a problem. Maybe it's a problem they don't even have. And so they'll move forward, but it's not a good fit. And so in those instances, you've got to understand that and cut bait, because you'll waste a lot of time not only saving that customer, but then also trying to pull them back in to get value long term. Not every customer needs a product.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
And also, I think here, Kristi, that actually takes us to one more point from here, that it's also important to see whom we are selling the product to. So sometimes, because I know sales have targets and they would anyways want that, yes, the product should be sold, but it's very, very important to focus upon value-based selling. That's very important. Are we? Is the product able to fit their needs? Is it a great fit? And because it's better not to get them onboarded and getting them churn after 2 months or 3 months. So I think that is also one point that comes out of this discussion. Yeah.
Absolutely. I will say some of the best organizations I've worked in are where I have a strategic partnership with a sales organization. And I will say I am fortunate at Intellishift. I work very closely with our VP of sales. And in fact, customer success is now inserted in the sales cycle at multiple stages. So not only do we use customer success and our experience, our journey as a core differentiator for who we are in the market, we also get to lean in to make sure that we're asking good questions to assess and help them understand our best way to be successful should they come on board.
Right. Yeah. I definitely agree with you. Yeah. Next question for you, Kristi. What is the most clear sign that a customer is going to churn?
If they're not using your product, right? I mean, at the end of the day, like they bought a technology, if they're just not using it at all, it's a pretty clear indicator that you may not be able to retain them long term. At the end of the day, like, listen, we're, for the most part, right, if we're in the B2B space, we're supporting SaaS companies, you're in the technology space, they got to use your product, right? You can't get value out of something you're just not using. So at the end of the day, if I had to say there's one thing you're looking at, if they're not logging in, if they're not using it, there's zero chance they are achieving any outcome from your solution.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. So the last question for you in the rapid fire round, and you have been able to clear all of the questions. I'm very sorry to say, but we do not have any such prizes, but yeah. Last question for you. When do you think it's too late and you better stop putting in energy? That yes, it's better that the customer should go because it's too late now. When do you think so?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's going to look different. It's going to look and feel different for every customer that gets to that final stage. I think at the end of the day, if it is no longer a mutually beneficial partnership, it's time to part ways, right? Now, when I say that, it's like, obviously some businesses, you want to protect a certain logo, right? Like if Slack was one of my customers or Zoom was one of my customers, I might want to preserve that because of who they are, right? So that's still going to be beneficial, even if it's not financially lucrative to the business to keep them. That logo is worth something, right? So when it is no longer going to benefit either party, you got to part ways. And I think that is, it's going to look and feel different every time, but that's the assessment. And I would say that's the point in time where I'm like, you know what, it's better that we just walk away and like, let's end amicably. And hopefully, you know, we can both be on to greener pastures.
Right. Yeah.
That was the rapid fire round. Then we go to the dilemma situation. So sometimes you have a very big customer that is asking a lot of changes to your product or your service, and you have to put a lot of time and resources in it. Is it better to focus on that big customer because it's a very lucrative contract, or is it better to focus on smaller and newer customers, and so you don't have to put all the resources into changing your product and services?
So what I would say is upfront, well, let's just park the real question that you're asking about, like investing the time and resources. I think a lot of this comes down to setting proper expectations, right? For most of us, if we're working at a B2B SaaS company, we are not building custom product, right? We are building for the masses.
Yeah.
And so you've got to really be able to have the appropriate conversations and educate the customer that that is who you are, right? At the end of the day, they bought what they have, not what you're building, right? So as long as your sales team isn't selling on futures, you have the product that they purchased. Now, that said, there are feature enhancements, right? Like, oh, I wish that I could do this in 2 clicks instead of 5. I wish that button was blue and not green, right? Those are feature enhancements where I think it's the responsibility of the CS leader or professional on the account to level set with the customer and say, these things are not prohibitive, meaning you can still get value out of our solution. Let's elevate the conversation. Let's set proper expectations. The other side of that coin, if the product is not letting them do the job they need to do, that's where you really have to lean in and determine, do we need to go this route to make this big change? And will that change benefit more than one customer, right? So this is where the alignment between customer success and product is so key, because it's not just, we want to save this one customer. Your product team hopefully has a roadmap. They hopefully have a vision. They hopefully have a direction that they're headed to serve the masses.
Right.
And they have to lean in also at some point and say, the level of effort here is worth the revenue. It's worth the time and investment. And we can do that because there is going to be a higher value for more of our customers. I think that's the consideration and route that I would take, is one, understanding and being able to set proper expectations with your customer, work with product to assess if that is the right direction. But then at the end of the day, it comes down to a business decision, right? Like, are we willing to reallocate resources to doing this work to preserve this customer? At the end of the day, will that customer actually be happy? Right. What I've also found is we've done that, right? I won't name the big CRM customer that used to be my customer, who dominates the world. They asked for some very specific requests. We built them. You know what we failed to do, though? Get any documentation where they signed off saying, if we did that, they would stay with the partnership. So what I would also say is, you've got to cover all your bases. Oftentimes we develop and it's great, but then the customer decides to leave anyway.
Yeah.
So you've also got to make sure that you as an organization are doing your due diligence. I highly recommend getting something signed off that says, Mr. Customer, here's the scope of work on what you're requesting. Here's the timeline in which we will deliver it. If we do X, you are saying your intention is to continue the partnership with us. Get something in writing, cover your bases, because, man, it has been painful when we have done all the work and it's so great and we feel like we're checking all the boxes and the customer should be so happy, only to hear them say goodbye. So I think, like I said, it's setting expectations, having proper cross-functional alignment. And then again, you know, if you're going to do it, make sure it's going to be mutually beneficial and that the outcome you're looking to achieve is actually going to be a reality.
Yeah, I definitely feel the pain there, Kristi. Because when you have done everything, you're coordinating with engineering, you're coordinating with different teams, and after that, you actually show that the product is ready. And I've also had these such situations in the past, wherein the customer was anyways, like, they had to leave, but the teams, like, they put in their hard work. The CSMs were involved, but at the end of the day, can't do much about it. Yeah, so that I definitely feel the pain there. With this, moving to the last round for this chat show, though we don't want to end it here because we have with us Kristi today, but still, yeah, because we have to move on with the show. The question is, which is the question of the day, churn is an important measurement for customer success, but how to measure churn when you have a product or a service with no recurring customers?
With no customers?
No recurring customers.
No recurrent.
Oh, no recurring customers.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is there, you just have a product, there's no subscription?
Right. So if the customers are not coming back, if they're not renewing, how should we actually handle churn there?
So are they going month to month in this example? Are they going to, like, is there just no subscription so they can leave anytime?
We are talking about both those scenarios here. So if they're going on month-to-month basis, or maybe in the middle of the subscription only, they might say that we're not liking the product and we want to go, and it's happening with every customer.
Now, got it. Interesting. Well, again, any customer leaving, that is a symptom of a bigger disease. Right. So I'm going to go back to my initial answer to some of our previous questions and say, you've got to figure out what is the cause for that.
Right.
If you've got all of your customers who are requesting to leave
Right.
in mid-cycle,
Mhm.
you've got a big issue, right? It's probably the product's not doing what it needs to. It could be the company is very poorly orchestrated, and so things aren't working as intended, even from an operations standpoint. So stop whatever you're doing, go move further up the funnel and figure out where is that tipping point, right? Like where is that customer falling off, and
Right.
go fix that.
Right.
Because again, now you're just scrambling to save. And this is also why, even my health score that I've developed at Intellishift isn't a churn indicator, because that's not helpful. Again, I don't want to
Right.
know when my customer is already at risk. I need to know sooner in the partnership when there are signs that
Right.
things aren't going well, or I need to know very prescriptively what I need to be doing to get that customer to be green. So in that case, like I'm going to say, park everything, go figure out earlier what's happening. If they're going month to month, again, it's going to be lack of perceived value. Customers that are getting a ton of value, customers that are happy with the experience, they're going to have no problem going into subscription as long as it makes sense for their business.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely agree with you on that, Kristi. Any thoughts here, Lotte?
Yeah, I also totally agree. I found everything. I found it a very interesting episodes.
Yeah.
Very, yeah, very useful insights, and I'm still very amazed by your 72 playbooks. I'm still shocked about that, but
Wishes I had last, but
Yeah.
they are very good. Like I said, it's the intention there is to give some guidance, not to tell them what to do. They are
Yeah.
very smart. My team is brilliant, and I trust them.
Yeah.
But when you've got a lot on your plate and there's a lot of moving pieces,
Yeah.
the more you can do to remove redundant tasks or
Yeah.
giving people the need to think about what exactly we did previously, it helps people move quickly. And that's what you often need to do. I
yeah,
think an important thing when you're navigating risk in an account is your ability to move fast, right? You've got to have a sense of urgency. And I think having these things in place enables people to focus on the right work and moving quickly.
yeah, I think it's very useful.
Yeah.
I'm still amazed by it in a positive way. It's it will be very helpful. Okay, so with these ending notes, I think we are at the end of our CS chat show. So we really want to thank you, Kristi, for joining us for our second episode and giving all those very useful insights. And we hope that you enjoyed it too.
Oh, this was great. And one of my, like I said, well, maybe not my favorite topic, but I think a very, very important topic for the audience. So hopefully everyone found value in some of my points.
Definitely, Kristi. Everyone will love that.
Sure,
I'm
they
very
will.
sure.
Yeah.